Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for clicking on this video. Today we're talking about the 6th house and more importantly what it means when you have certain planets sitting in your 6th house and how that manifests in your personal life. And the 6th house is the house that deals with harsh things. It represents responsibilities, it represents obstacles, enemies, fights, litigation. It's naturally a very malefic house, and it also deals with your health as well. And so if we're thinking about the stages of life, if we're thinking about ages, the 5th house was like that time in life when you're like 18 or 19 and you just, came into your own identity, came into your own creativity and your own sense of pleasure and enjoyment in the world. But when you get to the 6th house, it's kind of like that stage of life that is like mid-adulthood. And you find out what adulting really is, when you find out the harshness of life, you find out responsibilities, you have bills to pay. That is the 6th house. And so when you have certain planets there, it can show you how good you are at dealing with those things. Are you great at dealing with obstacles? Are you great at overcoming enemies? How do you deal with responsibility? How do you deal with adulthood? How do you deal with the harsh things of life? So we're going to see, based on the planets you have in the 6th house, how you deal with those things, if it's something that is in your skill set, if it's something that's lost on you. We're going to see with this placement. And of course, as always, if you don't know the planets in your houses yet, I'll leave the link down below for that. And this can apply to any chart that you look at. So the information in this video can apply to your Vedic chart, Western chart, or Placidus, whole sign, etc. Any chart you look at, this can apply to that. If you have your sun sitting in the 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with the harshness of life, dealing with responsibilities, dealing with adulthood, for example, dealing with battles or disputes, you're someone with quite a lot of willpower. This is the placement of someone with a lot of grit, a lot of bravery, a lot of courage. And why is this? This is because the 6th house is malefic on its own. It's a harsh house. It's not a mushy-gushy house. But the sun is also a little bit malefic. So when you put a harsh planet like the sun in a harsh house like the 6th house, it gives you a really strong placement. And so sun is quite strong in this house, and it gives you that ability to deal with harsh things, deal with conflict. And especially when it comes to your enemies, when it comes to your Opps, people that are against you, you're someone who probably won't go down without a fight. Someone who is very competitive, for example, really focused and have that strength to defeat your opponents, defeat your competition. Overall, being competitive is strong here. Being someone with a lot of grit, strong here. And when it comes to your health as well, you can find you're someone who is naturally very healthy, or you have a strong immune system. And again, that malefic energy of the sun being in the 6th house creates a lot of strength naturally. So you might find that you don't get sick a lot, or you have a high immune system, or strong immune system here with sun being in your 6th house. If your moon is in the 6th house, when it comes to dealing with harshness, dealing with obstacles and responsibilities, you can find a little bit of passiveness there. And why is that? It's because the 6th house is malefic and the moon is benefic. So when you put this mushy-gushy moon energy in a malefic house, it kind of creates that tendency to kind of retreat or not be too head-on with obstacles or head-on with facing responsibilities. So you might find, depending on the placement of your moon and the other planets in your house, that this sense of passivity is present, or this sense of like kind of like weakness, or I wouldn't say weakness, but just having a little bit of delay with kind of dealing with things in a head-on way. And when it comes to health, I feel like with your moon in the 6th house, maybe obstacles and harsh things of life easily drain you. This is the placement where your emotional health, your kind of stress levels kind of are tied to those things. So when you feel too overburdened with things, you can feel really drained, stressed out. Stress in general can be a strong theme here, and getting stressed out easily is strong with moon in the 6th. If you have your Mercury sitting in the 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with obstacles, dealing with harsh things, you might do it in a very mental way, doing things or facing obstacles in a way that uses strategy. You might be a little bit passive or a little bit indirect with dealing with things. Mercury energy can be a little bit tricky. It's not so forward or blunt. So having Mercury being in a malefic house that kind of requires that malefic forwardness can create a little bit of passivity or avoiding things or doing things in a way that is a bit more convoluted or tricky. But eventually you do probably face your obstacles or face your responsibilities, but it might be more in a mental way, strategic way, in a way that is more tied to your mental acuity. When it comes to health, you might find that your nervous system is a key point here, or your psychological mind. So whatever you deal with kind of in an obstacle sense can affect your nervous system, can affect your psychological mind quite a bit when it comes to your health overall. If you have Venus sitting in your 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with the harshness of life, when it comes to dealing with obstacles and disputes, that you're someone who doesn't necessarily want to face those things head on. This can create a person who's not terribly confrontational. The 6th house is so malefic, and Venus is a benefic planet. So putting a benefic in a malefic house kind of creates that clash of like, not necessarily feeling like you want to face things so bluntly, so strongly, but feeling a little bit more passive, wanting to do things in a more harmonious way. Venus doesn't necessarily want to be in the 6th house because Venus wants to enjoy pleasurable things, and the 6th house is not about pleasure. So you can find that things in a more indirect way or avoidant way can be strong here, but it depends on the placement of your Venus, the sign it's in, etc. But what I will say is that this creates a strong ability to be someone of service, help others, be supportive of other people, be really great at supporting people. I think that's a strength here with Venus in your 6th. And if you have Mars sitting in your 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with the harshness of life, dealing with obstacles, enemies, disputes, things like that, you're someone who does have quite a bit of willpower, quite a bit of strength and grit, and really someone who is a true fighter. The 6th house energy is malefic, Mars is malefic, so they go hand in hand. So when you have a malefic planet in a malefic house, it is quite strong. And Mars here does well in the sense that you're able to overcome your enemies, able to defeat people, be very competitive and win, be a natural leader, be someone who's dominant, authoritative. Dealing with harsh things, dealing with your responsibilities is something that might be a strength of yours, and something that isn't that hard for you because you know how to be blunt, direct, confrontational, and face things head on. And overall, Mars in the 6th gives a really strong ability to fight. And when it comes to your health with Mars in the 6th, your health can also be strong as well. Again, Mars in the 6th is generally a strong placement depending on the sign, but health can be strong here, and having a strong physical body, a strong immune system can be strong with Mars in the 6th. And if you have Saturn sitting in your 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with obstacles, enemies, dealing with the harshness of life, you have a logical approach to that. You have an approach that is strategic, that is grounded, that is practical. This is a strong placement for Saturn. And why is that? It's because the 6th house is a malefic house. Saturn is a malefic planet. So when you put a malefic planet in a malefic house, it does quite well. And Saturn here can create the ability to overcome obstacles. You've probably faced your fair share of obstacles in life, but when you face those obstacles, you find that you know how to overcome them. You know how to have a sense of resilience. I feel like resilience is so strong here with Saturn in your 6th, and you can be a very resilient person, strong person, someone who's really grounded, practical, and you know how to deal with obstacles in a very strategic way overall. And it could also give a strong immune system, depending on the planet or sign of Saturn or placements in your 6th house. It can give strong health, strong longevity, living a long time. and the ability to overcome any sickness as well. If you have Jupiter sitting in your 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with responsibilities, dealing with the harshness of life, dealing with enemies, disputes, etc., that you're someone who can be a little bit more escapist towards those things. And why is that? It's because the 6th house is a natural malefic house, and Jupiter is the most benefic planet. So when you put mushy-gushy Jupiter in the 6th house, it kind of creates that clash of not being terribly confrontational, not being terribly keen on dealing with harsh things. Whereas if you have like a harsh planet like Mars in the 6th, it does well because Mars wants to do those 6th housey things, but Jupiter doesn't really want to do the harshness or the harsh things that come with the 6th house. So you yourself might kind of struggle with that a bit, or like I said, escapism can be strong. Being a little bit avoidant can be strong. Being not too practicality can be something that you struggle with too with Jupiter in the 6th, where you might be overly optimistic towards something to the point where it's like you're not seeing the practicality you need to face something real. So that can be an issue here with Jupiter in the 6th. And when it comes to your health, you might find that you're a little bit overindulgent as well, and that can lead to health problems. But again, it kind of depends on your Jupiter strength here, but overall, Jupiter is expansion. Having it in the 6th can create an overindulgent sort of habit or behavior towards certain things. But this placement, I would say the great thing is that it's great for servitude, being of service, helping others, supporting others, being involved in charity, for example. This is really great for that specific reason. If you have Rahu sitting in your 6th house, you can find that when it comes to dealing with the harshness of life, that you have a certain fearlessness about you. You have a certain sense of, I'm going to overcome this, or you have a strong ability to overcome things, be confrontational, for example. It might take a little bit of time since you do have to kind of evolve into your Rahu placement, but once you tap into it, you are great at confrontation, great at fighting, overcoming your enemies, overcoming disputes, especially using your mental energy, strategy, tricks and games and things like that to overcome any obstacle in your life. So this does give us strength with overcoming things and facing the harshness of life. Since Rahu is naturally malefic on its own, and then putting that malefic energy of Rahu in a malefic house like the 6th house creates a strong ability to be confrontational and overcome obstacles. If you have Ketu sitting in your 6th house, when it comes to overcoming obstacles, dealing with the harshness of life, dealing with responsibilities, you might feel a certain detachment there or not feel too keen on facing things head on. You can be a little bit detached from that, be a little bit escapist from that, but for some people it can manifest as a strength. So Ketu is your past life talents, so some of you guys can be really strong at that ability to be confrontational, to overcome things, to face the harsh things of life and not let it consume you, but you consume it. But it just depends on your Ketu placement, the sign it's in, but overall it can create that sort of ambivalence to overcoming obstacles, maybe even detachment. But if it is strong, you can find that you do have that ability to overcome any harsh thing of life. So comment down your placements below, and thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.